All right, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Well, we did it.
We did it.
Ta-da! We are now able to funnel money into Mexico legally.
Yes. Yep.
So throughout this whole process of oh, hi, I'm Chris,
I'm Stephanie.
and we're better to go to travel, and so we recently bought a home in Mexico,
We did in Playa del
Playa
Carmen.
del Carmen. Woohoo! And
Hmm.
part of the process, um, we were always wondering about, okay, well, do we need a bank account in Mexico? And the general answer that we got from people was, uh,
You can make it work.
yeah.
You don't have to have a bank account.
Um, but at some point, it became a realization to us, especially after we bought the place, was that it's a lot easier if you do have a Mexican bank account. We'll take another video and walk through the process that basically Stephanie did to do the transfers of monies from the U.S. bank account and stuff. But we thought we'd use this video to walk through what it takes to open up a bank account in Mexico. And Stephanie's going to walk you through it, but I'll just kind of set the stage here. So there are a variety of, so in general, Mexico is a country that people do a lot of transactions using cash.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some transactions that require you to wire money or transfer money to other people or to other businesses. For example, when you're paying your electricity bill, or your in our case your HOA, or for internet.
Mm-hmm.
Now, from what I've heard, you can sometimes go to the bank with cash and give them the account number for that business, and they can take it there. But especially for us when we're not in the country, that's an inconvenience.
To say the least.
Yeah, to say the least. Um, and so, and yeah, again, uh, bring a backpack and make sure there's plenty of daylight between when you get the cash and when you need to get to the bank. Not that
Mm-hmm.
it's necessarily unsafe more so than any place else, but um, yeah, it's kind of interesting. So I digress again. Um, so why don't you kind of talk about what it's like opening up a bank account in Mexico, and the things that people need to know.
So, to be clear, I was asking about opening a bank account really early on in the process because it seemed to me like it would be really important. Because, as Chris mentioned, I was in charge of doing all of the wiring. And knowing what I know about wiring funds and the expense of doing it each time and having to watch the currency rates and all of that, I just wasn't interested in trying to have to do that for HOA payments on the monthly. But I was assured by several people that we wouldn't really need a bank account.
Not a problem.
That'll be fine.
Not a problem.
Until we
So
closed,
it was.
until we actually closed on the place. And Chris was like, you know what? I think we're going to want a bank account. And I was like, I think you're right.
Well, and also we were looking for any reason to go back to Mexico. So
Well, there's that. So, in order to open a Mexican bank account, there are a few key items that you need to know. We'll start with the one that we didn't know, and that is that you actually have to have an address with your name associated to it there in Mexico. Without that, you can go to the bank, but they won't give you an account.
yep.
And so it was fruitless for me to be too concerned about it ahead of time because until we actually had the deed with our name on it, there was no opening a bank account. So that's first and foremost.
Now, and to that point, you don't have to buy a house to do that, but you at least have to have some sort of permanent residence. So,
I don't think you mean
or
permanent.
yeah, I don't. Let me not use the word permanent. You have to have a place that you can get them as your address. So it could be, I'm staying for 3 months at this Airbnb, and you have a copy of the Airbnb doc. In fact, if you go into Airbnb, when you rent the place, you can see there's a place we can actually have it print out the documentation. But you have to have an address that they can send things to. The other thing real important is that you don't have to be a Mexican citizen nor a resident. So we are there still. We go there on a tourist visa,
Mm-hmm.
and so there are times where they'll ask for your residency number. you can actually use your U.S. Social Security number to do so. And also, a quick point. So we're talking specifically from the perspective of U.S. citizens. It's slightly different if you're from Canada in terms of the personal identification number that you would use.
That is all true. So we started the process earlier by communicating with the one bank that we are aware of that you don't have to have citizenship,
Yep.
and that is
Intercam.
Intercam.
We like Intercam. They're very tolerant of our gringo questions, and yeah, overall it was a great process. But they're pretty much the only bank that we felt understood how to engage with a non-Spanish speaking person and help them open up an account in Mexico.
Well, and I think they may be the only one where you don't at least have to have temporary
Yes,
residency.
that is true.
So if you are a foreigner and you have an address there that is a place that you've bought or a place that you're renting, but you are not establishing residency, but you need a bank account, you can go to Intercam because from our experience, that will work. So Chris was in communication with our executive banker via email and WhatsApp and giving information to him before our trip down. And for that, I'm very grateful because the process once we got there was pack a lunch. You are going to be there for more hours than you would anticipate to get it open. Now, I say that just as kind of a joke, but it did take hours
Two
and
2 hours, almost 2 hours on the dot. It
twice.
seemed like longer. Yeah. Well, and to just back up just a bit, you can go to Intercam's website
Hmm.
and say that you are looking to open a bank account. And you'll follow the process, and they will you fill out a basic form, and they'll have someone respond back to um, called the bank executive. So this will be the person who will walk you through the process, and they'll start by sending you a document to fill out. You can use email or you can use WhatsApp to fill it out, but that will help. And as Stephanie's alluding to, in our case, um, the part that was missed was that the person that we were working with um, didn't make sure that everything that he said we needed to complete we had completed, so that when we got there we still had one more checkbox to fill out in terms of their process before we could come back
Actually,
and get
right.
things done.
So, yeah. So make sure that you are prepared for it to be a multi-day process and it will take a couple of hours actually sitting at the bank because they're very thorough.
So if you want to kind of walk through the information that you had to provide beforehand so that you can make the process that when you're in country is a little bit easier.
Well, the nice thing is that they will give you a checklist. So when you start the process, you'll know exactly what you have to take. But for the sake of giving you all of the details now, you'll need a name of the account holder and a joint account holder. You'll need to provide your email address, your phone number, which doesn't have to be local, your nationality, your marital status, your job information, and if you're retired, your last job, the name of the company that you work for, the position, your beneficiaries information, inclusive of name, birth date, place of birth, and the relationship, plus two personal references with name and phone number, the name of the bank in your home country, your tax identification number. So you need all that just to complete the application. Then you also need to provide your passport, a temporary or permanent residency, or a tourist visa, and a bill from outside the country, which is like a utility bill from your home country attached to your current address because they will look that up. A utility bill from Playa del Carmen residence. It can be water, light, or phone. A photo of the residence, a rental contract if the bill is not in your name, or the bill of sale if the bill is not in your name if it's something that's in process.
So all this information you can provide beforehand, email, WhatsApp, and in theory, what happens is that they will start that process so that when you are in country, that that's something you're not having to go through. So you'll arrive on let's say day one, and they'll confirm all this information. In our case, we arrived there on day one. Our bank executive um, was out sick that day and hadn't really conveyed to anybody else that we were coming in, and so that was a comedy of errors for quite a bit that first day, where we ended up being there almost 2 hours that day just for them to go back and verify all the information that he had gotten from us. And then I think there was one other piece of information that they didn't have that we had to provide.
Mm-hmm.
And then wait for it. How long do you have to wait from that point?
Well, it depends. Depends on if they rush it through, I guess. But what is it, 3 days?
Yeah, 2 to 3 days. We
Yeah.
got there on a Wednesday, and we were able to get it on a Friday because we said we have to have this by Friday, and we kind of explained that there was a miscommunication on their side that they weren't ready, and so. But typically, what they'll tell you is 3 business days, um, and I took comfort in the fact that they understand that banking is something that they're still trying to get people in Mexico to do more of, and so there is a lot of process and uh, verification of information to make sure that you're comfortable and confident in the banking system.
On the second day, we came in, they asked to review our passport and confirm the information, and then they took fingerprints. And boy, do you have to press hard on their little fingerprint machine. That was tough for me. Then they print out the agreement, everybody signs, and you're able to make your first deposit.
Yeah, it took about what a good 30-40 minutes for in our case Gerardo to get all the papers, and you're signing things, and then like Stephanie said, you're doing your fingerprints, and then at that point your bank account is open, so they'll give you the account number, and then you take the cash you have and you go over to the teller, and she deposits it in the account, and then you get back a receipt that says, okay, I've made a deposit in my account.
So, one thing that was surprising to us was when we went to visit the attorneys after the closing, we were given an envelope full of pesos that were left over from the transaction, and it wasn't a cashier's check or a money order. It was literally an envelope of pesos. So
42,000 pesos, which is at the time of this filming about 2,000, about 2,100 dollars US,
mhm.
which is a few months' salary for the median income in Mexico. So um, that was kind of a little nervous laughter when she said, "Okay, here's your money back." We're like, oh, "Okay,
I'm glad we brought a backpack.
yeah,
So that's why Chris earlier said bring a backpack, because if there are pesos to be had, you may end up with a nice big stack that you then will want to take to the bank for that initial deposit. So it felt really good to be able to put that into the bank account.
yeah," because we then went over to our home, to our condo, and our tenant there said, "Well, since you're here, let me just go ahead and pay you for the next couple of months." And so he also gave us several $1,000s in pesos. So I made two bank trips that day to take that cash in. So
Yep. Yep. So they'll also give you your ATM cards while you're there.
yeah, so let's talk about that process, because the ATM cards are pretty much what you'll use in Mexico. And so if you do find yourself spending a lot of time in Mexico, it may be beneficial to you that rather than before you leave, getting cash, ordering pesos from your bank, or going to an ATM and using your foreign ATM or credit card, it may be beneficial to you if you're going to be there for long periods of time. Just go ahead and open up an account, and do what Stephanie did, which was watch the exchange rates and
Hmm.
find the opportune time to transfer money over into your Mexican bank, so that when you're there, you're going to use your local ATM card.
So I'm going to use a big word here, arbitrage. And
Ooh,
that is what we
great
managed
movie
to
with Richard
do.
Gere, by the way. anyways.
So we managed to save about 4,000 USD on the purchase of our condo by using the exchange rate. And so now our bank account has some money in it. It has some pesos in it. So we have that luxury of looking at the exchange rate and waiting to send more money to that bank account
Yep.
until it is advantageous.
Now, one thing that was surprising to us, and um, as a couple, where I had initiated the process, and so Stephanie was on as the joint owner, um, was that we both received ATM cards, but when you go, they also walk you through setting up the mobile app.
Mm-hmm.
And in setting up the mobile app, they only put it on one phone, and that is the phone of the person who is the primary on the account. So while Stephanie does have access to, she can go into the bank and do transactions there, and she can use her ATM card. She's not able to get into the application on her phone.
I can't
So
sign in at all.
yeah, it's again,
Yeah.
it's part of their secure process.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was probably between 4 to 6, kind of a geeky term here, but two-factor authentications that took place just to get the phone set up. But when we asked, okay, do you do it on Stephanie's phone now? He said, no, we only do it on one phone. So that's something to be aware of.
Mm-hmm.
I think when we go back next time, because Stephanie does most of the transactions, we'll go ahead and set up a second account with Stephanie as the primary. And then what we'll do is that she'll use that as the account that's largely for
The
the business
business. Right.
transactions, and then I'll have the other one that we'll use for
Personal.
personal. We'll
Mm-hmm.
both have ATM cards, but if she ever wants to say, hey, we're sitting down, we want to look at the account, she'll have to look on my phone, and I'll have to look on her phone
Yeah, it's real
for that.
different.
So that's
Yeah.
just something to keep in mind.
Yep. So, what are your final thoughts?
So it was not the best day for us when we were sitting there on day one trying to understand why they weren't ready for us like they said they would be.
Well, we had an appointment.
We
Not
had
only
Yeah.
did they say that they were going to be ready, we had an appointment with a person and a time. And we were there on time, and the person wasn't there. And you mentioned that Gerardo helped us, but I think it was actually Jesus.
Well, I mean, he helped in terms of the initial process over email, and he had planned on being there. And the day we're supposed to be there, we're sending him messages, WhatsApp, getting no response. We get there to the bank, he's not there, and then he says, "Oh, I'm off today. My colleague will help you," and his colleague had no idea.
Mm-mm.
So that can happen in the U.S. as well. We get it, but when you also have the language barrier there, and you are on a clock that says, "Hey, we've got to fly out on Saturday,"
Mm-hmm.
and the bank is not open on Saturday, it just added the stress to the situation. But we learned a little bit about our own communication, and frankly, making sure that we both respect the fact they're both trying to get to the same goal.
Mm-hmm.
So yay for us, we got a chance. God gave us a chance to work on our
Duke it out.
relationship. Yeah, but I personally was impressed with just the level of security that they um, and the diligence to process that they had that made me feel very comfortable about the banking system there.
Mm-hmm.
And Intracam is a bank that does do transactions with other banks around the globe, so there's no concern there. But just as someone who's coming in, and you're opening up a bank account in another country, I walked away very comfortable with the end result, but just had to be a little more patient with the process than I would have to be, say, in the U.S.
Definitely.
What about you? What were your kind of final thoughts or takeaways from it?
Well, I was shocked at how long it took actually there at the bank
Yeah.
because you had communicated so clearly and so thoroughly prior to our appointment. I was shocked that nobody seemed to know
Yeah.
that we had an appointment. And the funny thing to me is, even when you have an appointment, you still have to take a number. So I'm not really quite sure why you set an appointment, but it's fine. It's just really different. Like, if you have an appointment with a person, usually you just see the person. But there, they will have you take a number even though you come in for an appointment, I think. but I'm not 100% positive that we needed to take a number.
I know why. Because in our case, Gerardo actually worked at the back in the back office, which was a couple blocks away. And so by making an appointment with them, that was in theory, that was to make sure he knew he had to walk the 2 blocks and be at the commercial or the customer office that they had just 2 blocks away. That's what I think it was for.
What about the second appointment?
Well, the second appointment we didn't need because at that point we just needed to go in and finish the paperwork like everybody else. Oh, that is a good point. So the person who helped us spoke English, Pepito, just like I speak Spanish. We got through it. They actually do have some people that English is either their first language or very fluent in English. So when you do get there, you can sometimes ask for someone who's English speaking. But we'll actually in the notes below we'll actually give the name of Gerardo. So if you want to look up him specifically, if you're in Playa del Carmen, you can reach him directly.
Okay. So, any other thoughts you want to review?
No, I think we're happy with the process
Mm-hmm.
overall.
Yes.
Stephanie the other day made our first HOA payment.
Woo! That
Um,
felt
and
amazing.
again, you don't use the mail system there. You actually go into the app, and in our case, and in most cases, they'll give you the account number that you make the deposit to. And so you
Mm-hmm.
go in like you're doing a transfer here in the US with like Zelle,
Mm-hmm.
and you put in the account number and you put in your account number and you put in, the little memo, and then you actually get a receipt back and you then send that receipt, via email or WhatsApp
As proof.
to as proof, and you're done. So I I I like that process in terms
Mm-hmm.
of just you don't have to worry about the mail or credit cards and all that
The
stuff.
transparency, and I
Yeah,
like the accountability of having to send the proof, because it's not just from consumer to institution, it's also from institution to consumer.
yeah,
So when the escrow account people wired our money into our bank account, they also emailed us that confirmation to say, and it's done.
yeah.
Now, we'd already seen the money, so we knew it was done. But I really appreciated that it wasn't just on the consumer to always be providing that level of confirmation, but the institutions do it as well.
Agreed.
Yeah, so overall, it was a really good experience. There were just a few quirks, and I was surprised by them.
So when we go back and you open up your account, it should be pretty much a breeze, at least from what, well, not a breeze. We'll be more prepared.
Well, I think they've already got all of our information and
Yeah,
they verified us. So one of the tricky parts was during the verification process, they had our names attached to an old address, and our bill, they have the bill attached to the old address, and
yeah,
it wasn't the address where we live, and we haven't lived there for 8 years.
yeah.
Or
It was interesting because it was a utility bill, and for some reason, it was still associated with the utility bill for this house in Illinois was still associated with our other house in Illinois that we had 8 years ago.
and I think that's the one where you probably originally became a customer,
Yeah,
and then we moved here and the bill came with us, but somehow our old address was still on that bill.
and you know what address was at the top of the bill? This
This ad,
house.
but
They just blew past that one and went to the second one.
and then we had to have them correct the address actually on our checking account there, because they wanted to make it, or I suppose it's a savings account. Regardless, they wanted to make it our old address, and Chris was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa!"
Yeah,
Now me, I was like, "Just let them do it. We'll change it
yeah,
later."
and I didn't know the ramifications of them because at that point we didn't know if there's ever anything mailed to us. So I was like, let's get it right, and had to make a phone call, and it probably took about 10 minutes or so before
It
everything was
seemed like
okay
an hour.
to send anything back. But again, the diligence that they showed to
Yes.
make sure that everything was done above board and proper was great. I think if I had to decide between a bank in the U.S. and that bank in terms of the likelihood of some miscreant open up an account and doing and having the wrong information or whatever, it's more likely to happen in the U.S. than it was there because they were your passport, your pictures, your thumbprints, a picture of the residence,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. All of the
Um,
above. Yeah.
was
They
all
were
there,
they were
so
very
they
thorough.
know where you are.
That is true.
But now we're set.
Yep.
And but we wanted to share this with you because it's a question that we had, and we will be sharing this liberally every time on the Facebook group someone says, "Hey, how do you go about opening up a bank account in Mexico?"
Yep.
Um, and again, to give some context, this is in the state of Quintana Roo, Playa del Carmen, at Intercam Bank. I suspect it's the same in the Yucatan and other parts of Mexico. But for us, Intercam Bank was a very good experience overall,
Yep.
and we would highly recommend you just going to intercam.com and inquire there for more details and get in contact with a bank executive.
And just make sure you're patient
Yes, and bring a backpack.
and bring a backpack.
All right. Well, thank you for watching. If you guys have any questions or comments, yeah, definitely drop them below or send them to us on our website, b2g.travel, or anywhere on the Instagrams or the TikToks and all that fun stuff.
Thanks for joining us.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye.